trucks with dumps and utility bodies just in time for you to take advantage of the year-end tax savings. So come check out the amazing deals from Chevrolet and our huge inventory of vehicles right now here at Lamoille Valley Chevy, and spread the word. At Lamoille Valley Chevy, we know price matters. You heard Pat. Now's the time to get to the Big Dog Daddy year-end clearance sale at the new Lamoille Valley Chevy just past Stowe and Morrisville in the beautiful town of Hyde Park, Vermont.
The energy. We walked around for 35 minutes just in the parking lot looking for this car.
The passion.
UVM schedules the way they do to get as high a seed as possible in the NCAA tournament and to get as much tournament prep as they can, because they're not going to get it from their league.
The opinions on all your favorite teams.
The organization should be taking care of Matt rather than Matt taking care of the organization.
This is the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
What's up, everybody? Brady Farkas Show back at it on a Tuesday right here on WDEV AM and FM and WDEVradio.com. Short show today, just 40 minutes. We're up until 6:10. Then we kick it to Red Sox Yankees, first of two from Fenway. We'll get you ready for that. We do have another full show coming up on Thursday, everybody, so be aware of that. Another full show coming on Thursday. We'll talk Patriots with Pat's broadcaster, Bob Socci, here in about 15 minutes. We'll get his takeaways from what he saw Sunday in Miami. You can get in on the Napa Morrisville, Napa Waterbury text line. That's 802-585-3026 at your locally owned Napa stores in Waterbury and Morrisville. Facebook Live, YouTube Live, my Twitter account. You can watch the show anywhere, every single day as well.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
Opening thoughts on the Brady Farkas Show are brought to you by Sticks and Stuff and by Swanton Lumber, Vermont's most complete locally owned home center with locations in Enosburg, Derby, Middlesex, St. Albans, and at Swanton Lumber. They're online at sticksandstuff.com. Breaking news from Field Yates of ESPN that Patriots running back Ty Montgomery, the guy who scored the only touchdown for the Pats on Sunday, is being placed on injured reserve. So this means that Montgomery is going to be out at least 4 games here. So Ty Montgomery out for at least a month. He's got a knee issue. He had a knee issue at the end of preseason, came back. A lot of people were surprised he was active in week 1. Well, now he scores a touchdown and he goes on injured reserve, out for at least 4 weeks. Patriots have active in-house options to replace Ty Montgomery. Pierre Strong was a healthy scratch the other day, to use a hockey term, so he could just be made active. Kevin Harris, J.J. Taylor on the practice squad, they could be made active as well. But look, so the Patriots have answers. This is not a death blow to the organization, but it is interesting, right? Like, it is a negative. You have a guy who had a role, third down back, could catch out of the backfield, can run between the tackles, veteran experience, and now that guy's not there for a month. Whenever you lose active players, I never consider it good. Is it the biggest loss the Patriots could have had? No, but it's still a loss. It's a guy who found a way into the end zone, and no other Patriots player did that. No other Patriots player did that. So Ty Montgomery's out. I'd be curious about what Pierre Strong could do. I'd be curious if Ramondre Stevenson takes the mantle of the third down back, a guy who can catch out of the backfield. I'd be curious about how Bill Belichick and company handle this, but we're just learning a little bit about this. Out for 4 weeks, knee issue for Ty Montgomery. Hopefully he's back soon and can make a difference for the Patriots for, the last, 10 to 12 games of the season, but he's not going to be around for the next month. We are, however, starting to get some real breadcrumbs now about the Kendrick Bourne situation. We wonder why Kendrick Bourne's not playing. Why is Kendrick Bourne in the doghouse? We're getting those breadcrumbs, and now things are starting to make sense. Here's Tom Curran of NBC Sports Boston. He's got part of the story in what you're about to hear.
About Kendrick Bourne not being fully on board with the way the install was going. Here, looking at his role and seeing it diminish with 2 tight ends on the field. There was a meeting prior to the Carolina Panthers game that he was just a smidge late to, that I think, I was told that resulted in the benching that night. All of those things, I think, combined have landed him in Matt Patricia's doghouse. But are we talking about somebody who's gotten sideways with a particular coach and Belichick wants to give Matt the latitude to make his own decisions on how he proceeds? Or are we talking about a guy who's an active pain in the ass? I don't know, but we're looking at a guy whose production and the fact that he was in mothballs on Sunday certainly caught the eye of the owner, from what I understand. Oh. And I'd be surprised if he stays down for much longer.
So here's what we've got, right? We've got Tom Curran saying that. We've got some add-ons I'll tell you about in a second. So let's reset. Kendrick Bourne isn't thrilled about the Patriots' new offensive change. I apparently owe Greg Bedard, the Boston Sports Journal, an apology and a creamy, because when he said that Bourne was disgruntled 3 weeks ago, I laughed at him and said, what are you talking about? So apparently I owe Greg Bedard an apology. So Bourne's not thrilled about the offensive scheme changes because the team plays more two tight end sets now. With more two tight end sets, there's less wide receivers on the field, so Kendrick Bourne is off the field more. So Kendrick Bourne's not real thrilled about that. So that's number one. Then Bourne is late to a meeting before the Carolina game. Got that. Bourne also gets thrown out of practice against Carolina for fighting. Got that. So Kendrick Bourne is in Matt Patricia's doghouse. Then Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald, I believe, he adds that Bourne isn't unhappy with the coaching staff themselves. He's unhappy about his lack of targets, which would make sense. If he's not on the field because they're playing so much two tight end, how could he get targets? So that makes sense too. Callahan then adds that the team came out of training camp feeling like Bourne was their fourth best wide receiver, behind Devontae Parker, behind Nelson Aguilar, and behind Jacoby Myers. So two tight end set, more two wide receiver sets, and Kendrick Bourne is the fourth best. You're seeing this add up now. Bourne's not on the field. He's not even the next guy up in the two wide receiver sets, and he's not getting the ball. And then you have the final thing that Tom Curran said. Robert Kraft has now taken note of Kendrick Bourne's lack of playing time, and Curran says, basically, I'd be surprised if that continues, right? Like, I'd be surprised if that continues. Can we play the very end of that again?
What I understand. Ooh. And I'd be surprised if he stays down for much longer.
So Robert Kraft's going to make a phone call. He's going to make a phone call to Bill Belichick and say, what's going on? Play the man that I'm paying $20 million to total. So that's the story. Mad about targets, mad about rolling the offense, disgruntled about that, late to practice or late to a meeting, thrown out of practice, and now Robert Kraft's going to step in. So that's the story. And I got to say, absolutely none of that story that I just told you is good. Absolutely none of that story. First, I get that Robert Kraft writes checks, and I get that he wants his investments to see the field. I totally get that. But Robert Kraft is the owner. Robert Kraft is not the head coach. Robert Kraft pays people to make football decisions. Robert Kraft is supposed to, in theory, trust their judgment. And if they think that Kendrick Bourne isn't as good as the other guys, then Robert Kraft is not supposed to call down to Bill Belichick's office and override him. That, look, we hear all the time. Owners of companies say, hey, I employ people to make decisions for me. I let them do their thing. Robert Kraft apparently is no longer letting Bill Belichick do his thing. That's a problem. If Robert Kraft feels the need to make phone calls down to Bill Belichick's office, then he's playing the part of the meddling owner. That is not a healthy relationship. That is not a thing that can sustain itself for very long. Bill Belichick has always enjoyed the freedom to make decisions largely free of meddling ownership. Heck, Robert Kraft didn't even get in Bill's way when it came to Tom Brady. So Kendrick Bourne is apparently the line of demarcation here for Robert Kraft. If Robert Kraft is now questioning Belichick and now questioning Belichick's judgment and decision-making, and if he's going to tell Belichick, play Bourne or else, that's a problem. Right? It's been 20 years that Robert Kraft has trusted Bill Belichick. If he no longer does, that is an issue. If he plays the meddling owner, that is an issue. And then there's the Bill Belichick side of things here too, and that's not good either. Bill Belichick spent Robert Kraft's money last year, and he brought in a whole bunch of shiny new toys. It is Bill Belichick's job to figure out a way to use all of the players that have been invested in. If Bill Belichick has greenlit an offensive scheme change that doesn't utilize all these players, that's not good either. Bill Belichick spent a lot of money that wasn't his last offseason. I get why Robert Kraft is upset. Like, you spent my money and you're not going to use these things? I am ticked. I get why Robert Kraft is mad. But last year, Bill didn't really have a role for Jonnu Smith. If you were going to play two tight ends, if you weren't going to play two tight ends last year, why'd you pay two tight ends? This year, if you're going to play two tight ends, why did you end up with four wide receivers? If this team only truly needs 2 to 3, they didn't need to draft Tyquan Thornton. They didn't need to trade for Devontae Parker. They could have traded Nelson Aguilar. They could have traded Kendrick Bourne. If they don't need Kendrick Bourne, why is Kendrick Bourne still here? This is a Bill Belichick problem also. It doesn't seem like there's a real plan. I understand you need depth. I'm all for depth. But when you're paying $20 million to Kendrick Bourne over the life of a contract, he needs to be more than just a paperweight. If you didn't need him anymore, then trade him and get a 6th-round pick for him. Get the cap relief. If you didn't need Nelson Aguilar, then trade him. If you didn't need Devontae Parker, then don't acquire him. So Robert Kraft's in the wrong here for playing meddling owner, and Bill Belichick's not off the hook either. He spent a lot of money that wasn't his, and now he apparently doesn't have a role for all the guys he spent on. That's not good. That's not good. And then there's Bill and Kraft both signing off on Matt Patricia being in charge of the offense, and I don't know that Matt Patricia is just not being overly sensitive to this thing. Maybe this isn't a big deal, and it's Matt Patricia's problem. In which case, Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick should have sniffed this out and not allowed Patricia to have this role if he was so sensitive. I don't know that that's the case, but it certainly is a possibility. None of this is good. You have a player who doesn't like his role. You have a coach in Matt Patricia who it feels like is trying to prove a point to said player. You have a GM in Bill Belichick who paid a bunch of people and doesn't have room on the field for everybody. You have an offense that doesn't have room for Kendrick Bourne, its best player practically a year ago. And by the way, Robert Kraft makes a phone call. Hey, play Bourne more. Well, now what's going to happen? The new offense we spent months installing just goes away in 1 week? Is that what's going to happen here? If Robert Kraft calls down, hey, play more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Let's get Bourne on the field. Let's play a little more spread offense. So then the new offense just goes away. Is that how this works? Or the new offense stays, Bourne doesn't play, and Belichick and Kraft are fighting. And it becomes a Jerry Jones and every Cowboys coach relationship. None of this is good. Robert Kraft's pulling a power play and pulling rank on Belichick. Don't like that. Belichick clearly didn't spend wisely. Don't like that. Matt Patricia, I feel like, is probably trying to prove a point that doesn't need to be proven. Don't like that. Like, none of this is good as far as I'm concerned. It's the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. Okay, earlier today, I spoke with Patriots broadcaster Bob Socci. I spoke with Bob earlier today, before we knew about the Ty Montgomery news. So it was a great interview with Bob. I'm going to play it for you in a second, but you're not going to hear a question about Ty Montgomery because that news had not come out yet.
The old names are gone.
Brady takes the snap, backpedals, fires left, catch made by White, turns to the inside, dives across the goal line. Touchdown, Patriots!
But there's new hope in Foxborough.
Stevenson with a great run to the outside. Still on the go. Andre Stevenson trying to go wire. Second touchdown.
For the latest on the Patriots, we talk to the voice of the Patriots, Bob Socci, on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
All right, earlier today I spoke with Bob Socci. I started out the conversation by saying, hey, Bob, Mac Jones' back appears okay. Just back spasms, x-rays negative, so crisis averted here for the Patriots. But with the offensive line play, with the issues in communication, etc., are you worried about Mac Jones' physical health moving forward if he's going to take, this kind of beating all season long?
Yeah, I think you worry about a couple of different things, Brady. I think this goes back even to the practices before they started the preseason, and then, of course, once they got into preseason and training camp. I think it's also the emotional state, the mental state of the quarterback with so many changes this year, some of the frustration we heard vocally, some of it that we saw through the physical language, the body language, as well at various points. I think that you worry about pass protection. You worry about, the missed assignments, as you've noted. I mean, there were a couple of free runs at the quarterback, one of which, of course, because of a missed assignment on that blitz by Brandon Jones, leads to a touchdown for the Dolphins, one of the very critical plays in that game. And there were other times, high load on a launching personal foul by Javon Holland that gets nullified gets offset because of a holding call on that particular play. There was an offensive penalty as well on that particular play to offset it. There are a couple of other shots where Emmanuel Ogba, one of the best pass rushers in the league, gets to the quarterback really untouched. So there's a lot of things to clean up from the physical standpoint. The spacing of the receivers, very poor in the preseason. And again, I think in that game at times, a couple of former quarterbacks have pointed that out now in the analysis business. J.T. O'Sullivan, Dan Orlovsky. And I think you look overall, it's just the frustration of a single day coming off the preseason and the training camp. And you're right, the Patriots are very fortunate, Mac's fortunate that the x-rays were negative. The reports are encouraging in the immediate aftermath of that injury now. And he's tried to say the right things, certainly began the week saying the right things. But just watching some of the throws, too, off the back foot, those long heaves downfield as the game went along, the 4th and 3 play with nowhere to go with it as the Dolphins played coverage and ultimately knocked away a pass intended for Hunter Henry. I think as those things add up, if they continue to add up, and they're going up against a good defense this week, even if it's without T.J. Watt, I think you're concerned about the physical state, but also, like I said, the emotional and mental state.
How tenuous is this Kendrick Bourne situation? Bourne is saying the right things publicly. He isn't, playing a malcontent. But Phil Perry had reported that some of his teammates are now starting to question what is going on behind the scenes here and why isn't this guy playing. So you don't want that permeating the locker room.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that, right now around this team, have an opportunity or have the potential, I should say, to perhaps mushroom, if you will, if the Patriots don't correct the things that we talked about with your first question. Don't turn things around against Pittsburgh and play a much better game in week 2. It is still very, very early. I think Bill Belichick in his comments regarding Kendrick Bourne on one of the local stations here, I'm not going to mention the call letters because it's not my station, indicated, he said something that I think gives you an indication that we're going to see more of Kendrick Bourne in the coming days, perhaps more so in Pittsburgh. They really, used the 2 tight ends a lot more than they had at any point last year. The percentage of snaps for Henry and Smith on the field, very different from a year ago. And, they have to involve those players. They're paying them a lot of money. And they went with Aguilar and Parker and Myers as the 2 receivers, almost exclusively with those 2 tight ends on the field. Well, we'll see now if they change things up and try to spread it out a little more. But you're right, Kendrick Bourne goes in, and I think this adds to it. He goes in and he makes a big play. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand why he was held out of the second preseason game. He had a rough week of practice, to say the least. He was pulled out of a rep because of an equipment issue. Belichick got on him in the practice during the joints between the Patriots and the Carolina Panthers. Then, of course, threw a punch as part of one of several fights during those joint practices, held out that week from the game. But he went back against the Las Vegas Raiders in joint practices, seemingly had some energy, made some positive plays in those 2 days in Las Vegas of practice, and then had a chance to play in the game. Now he comes into this game, of course, we're talking about why he didn't play more. He did play the 2 snaps, one of which produced a long gain. The Patriots turned it over on the very next play, or at least one of the next snaps after that. And from that standpoint, now going forward, what happens? Either exasperates that situation or perhaps it alleviates it.
Bob Socci, voice of the Patriots, with us as he is every Tuesday at this time on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, WDEVradio.com. You know, I'm not smart enough to pick up on every little nuance, but I'm curious. Did we see a lot of elements of the new offense on Sunday? You know, I was picturing them to look like the Rams or the 49ers, and outside of a couple of tunnel screens, I didn't really get that impression that it was much different than a year ago. Was it?
Let me say, I have never, and I understand what people, the outside zone run, they definitely have looked to do more of that. But the idea that the Patriots were going to become Sean McVay's offense or Kyle Shanahan's offense, I just have not bought into that from the start. Were they going to do it more? Yeah, like they used to do, like 2010-11 when they would run outside zone. And they have always had outside zone in the playbook. They just have not run it as often. Now, again, more of an emphasis far and away. This is not to criticize the people who've noted that, because there has been far more of an emphasis on it in the spring and certainly during training camp. But given the problems, especially with the outside zone runs, those stretch plays, and the miscommunication, the problems blocking them, as we saw, for example, in the Raiders game, I don't think it's really that surprising that we didn't see much of it. I think we saw more of it than I was expecting against the Dolphins, and they actually ran it fairly effectively in comparison to what we had seen. But I think that the impression of the Patriots, we're going to overhaul the offense to become like Shanahan's 49ers or Shanahan's Broncos, going back to the draft, or McVay and LaFleur's offenses in Los Angeles and Green Bay. I always thought that was misguided. I will say too, Brady, I think that we didn't see some of the things that I was expecting with the new offense, especially as the game went along. Now they picked up the tempo at times. They got the drive to score the touchdown when they sped up the pace a little bit. We've heard a lot about wanting to play faster, and as the game went on, I didn't see that urgency in the offense at times. It's really about communication and the terminology they use as well, talking about the changes, the streamlining of the offense, and they had some issues, as we know. So, they've got a long way to go. It's very much a work in progress.
On a positive note, I thought the defense played better than I was expecting. I thought coming into the season, the offense would be the better of the two units. And the defense impressed me. The long drive before the half, the 4th and 7, that's inexcusable. But at the end of the day, the defense gave up just one touchdown. And you should be able to win a game when you give up just one touchdown. I thought the defense was better, tackling in space at time. Kyle Duggar did some nice things. What did you think of the defense overall? Did I read it right?
I think, for the most part, but there's still too many critical errors in key situations.
The Carl Davis jumping off sides was bad.
Yeah, again, unforced. You have Carl Davis offsides, unforced penalty, coming out of a timeout. He's over the ball. That's inexcusable. It's 4th and 1. I'm sure they told him, don't move until the snap. Yep. He knew it as soon as the penalty happened. He came off to the sideline. Not only the 4th down play with the Waddle catch, with the poor angle it appears, according to Duggar, and that runaway touchdown, a huge play before the half, obviously, but the play that preceded it. It's 3rd and 19, and the Dolphins pick up good yardage, 12 yards to Cedric Wilson, to maybe change the thinking for McDaniel. Maybe if he's on the minus side of the 50 in that case, he decides to be conservative and try to pin the Patriots deep and punt it away. But now you're on the plus side of the 50. Time is winding down. You're out of field goal range, or at least you're on the fringe of the field goal range of your kicker, Jason Sanders. And so you elect to snap it, and Waddle makes the catch and runs away from two defenders who collide. Again, in what it should have been a safe defensive call there. And then I think also after the Patriots score the touchdown, the Dolphins come right back and they get a field goal. And there were just too many other times, too, where the Dolphins got off the field, or the Patriots could not get the Dolphins off the field on key third downs. They were 7 for 15, I think, on 3rd and 4th downs. And I think when you look at defense, it's about points and it's about third downs more than anything else. The Patriots defense certainly did a really good job in terms of keeping the Dolphins out of the end zone overall. But I think, again, like it was very similar to some of the losses last year, Brady, in my opinion, when it comes to those critical moments, just not being able to make that play.
Hey, real quick, it was on your station. Felger and Maz were talking about this yesterday.
Oh, no.
Dolphins' decision to go for it on 4th and 7. In your estimation, is that more of a shot at the Patriots offense? Like, hey, if we don't get this, we don't trust you? Or is it, I just want to be aggressive. It's my first game. I want to show you that I believe in you.
I don't think it's a shot at the Patriots offense. I think McDaniel is reputed and to be like a lot of the young coaches. They're aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen coaches pay when they haven't been aggressive. And I think, we certainly saw it in the Monday night game. At the end of that game with Nathaniel Hackett. We saw the opposite of that with Brian Dable as well, of course, in the Sunday game when he picked up the win by going for 2. Not same circumstances, but I think at least, some relevance. I think in this case, again, time being what it was, you're out of field goal range. Now, maybe if it's Tom Brady and it's an explosive Patriots offense, maybe that does change your thinking and you just try to pin them deep. But the Dolphins in that situation, I think 4th and 7, you're thinking about it now. Like I said before, if it's 4th and much longer, which it should have been because you had a 3rd and 19, it doesn't even enter your mind. But you're on the plus side of the 50. Again, I think you have a lot of. I also think let's not slight the Dolphin defense.
Yep,
that's a good defense. Mm-hmm. It was a very good defense the second half of last year. Look at the stats from the second half of last year. An exceptional defense. When the Dolphins won 7 in a row last year, it wasn't because of their offense; it was because of the defense. And I think the defense was still the strength of the Dolphins on Sunday. So, was it a lack of confidence in the Patriots' offense, or a commentary on the state of the Patriots offense? Perhaps. But let's not forget, it's also a statement about your offense and even maybe more so your defense. But I know that if we're in Miami, you're talking that way. If you're in New England and Boston, and it's, the narratives are what they are. And in a lot of cases, they're justified for the Pats, the way things have gone thus far through the preseason and only one game of the regular season. But I think that one is a bit of a stretch to try to be consistent, to parallel the others. But that's what Felger and Maz do so well.
Yeah, that is what they do very well. Bob Socci, they are the best. Voice of the Patriots, Steelers, Sunday, 1 o'clock. Bob, we'll look forward to hopefully a better performance and a happier talk next week.
All right, Brady. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. That was my talk earlier today with Patriots broadcaster Bob Socci. Bob's with me every Tuesday here on the Brady Farkas Show, and the full interview always available on our podcast channel on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. I agree with Bob, by the way. I do not believe that going forward on 4th and 7 before the half was like some shot at the Patriots saying, hey, if we don't get this, we don't trust that you can go down the field. I didn't read it that way. I think that was all about Mike McDaniel sending a message to his own team, saying, look, I'm here to change the culture. I'm here to win. I believe in you. I think the risk reward there was great enough for McDaniel to say, hey, if we don't get this, at least I've sent a message to them that I trust them and I believe in them. And, hey, my quarterback Tua, who's never had anybody believe in him in this league, I'm showing him that I do. I did not think it was a referendum on the Patriots. I thought it was more about sending the right message to his own team. I agree with Bob there. Bob in Moncton says, Brady, lower your blood pressure. It's week 1. Patricia, Kraft, and Belichick all have long-time relationships with each other. They'll figure it out. Hey, Bob, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady had a long-time relationship with one another. And Robert Kraft had a long-time relationship with Tom Brady. And guess what? They didn't figure it out. Okay? Whenever there's a crack in a long-term relationship, people get divorced after 20 years, Bob. Not sure if you knew that. It can happen. So when Robert Kraft now is playing meddling owner and calling down to the office and telling Bill what to do football-wise, that's noteworthy. And that's a big deal. Does it mean that they can't fix it? No. But it certainly is noteworthy. Robert Kraft has let Bill Belichick do his thing forever. All the weird things that Bill Belichick has done and gotten away with, Robert Kraft has sat idly by and watched and let happen. Well, not this time, apparently. And that deviation is noteworthy. It's the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV, AM and FM, and WDEVradio.com. We'll get the CBS National News Update. We'll get you ready for Red Sox Yankees. And then Xander Bogaerts, if he leaves the Red Sox, we now know who might be interested. That's next.
This is WDEV, Vermont's news station, owned and operated by the Radio Vermont Group. From the top of Sugarbush, 96.1 FM, WDEV Warren and Waitsfield, 96.5 W243 Berry, 98.3 W252 CU Montpelier, along with our founding station, AM 550 WDEV Waterbury Montpelier, streaming at WDEVradio.com. 91 years of serving Vermont, the friendly pioneer, WDEV.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Dell Small Business.
I'm Allison Keyes in Washington. An upsetting day on Wall Street with the Dow dropping 1,276 points and the S&P suffering its worst day since June of 2020, falling 4.5%. Consumers are hurting. CBS's Linda Kenyon.
The Dow tumbled more than 1,200 points. David Lefkowitz, head of U.S. equities at UBS, says the latest report on consumer prices triggered the plunge.
Consumer price inflation was hotter than expected.
And Lefkowitz says the markets are now assuming the Fed will again raise interest rates when members meet next week.
The higher they go on raising interest rates, it makes the prospect of a recession a bit more likely.
Linda Kenyon, CBS News.
At a White House celebration this afternoon for the Inflation Reduction Act, President Biden told the nation,
I know it's been a hard few years in this country. The challenges we face are among the most difficult in history. But I have to tell you, as I stand here today, and a lot of you know me well, I am more optimistic than I've ever been in my entire life about America's future.
The man involved in the impeachment of two presidents, Ken Starr, died today of complications from surgery. Starr's probe of former President Clinton led to his impeachment.
My investigators work very hard and diligently to find relevant evidence.
Starr was on former President Trump's legal team for his first impeachment trial. In London, thousands turned out to watch the motorcade carrying the coffin with the body of Queen Elizabeth II inside as it arrived.
Listen to the applause by the people here outside Buckingham Palace, cheering for the Queen as she comes back home one final time, her final night at Buckingham Palace. Some hip, hip hoorays for the Queen. Steve Futterman, CBS News outside Buckingham Palace in London.
Paris is moving to cut some cost.
The City of Light is preparing to let the night go dark as soaring energy costs prompt some drastic cuts. The Eiffel Tower is usually lit until 1 a.m. Now, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo says the lights and the sparkling display on the hour will switch off before midnight after the last visitors leave. Streetlights will stay on for safety and the bridges will stay lit, but the lights on most of the city's monuments will go out at 10 p.m. from next week, dimming those romantic late-night walks in the City of Love. Elaine Cobb, CBS News, Paris.
Broadway now has a second theater named after a Black artist. The newly restored Court Theater has been named after prolific actor James Earl Jones. The 91-year-old was feted as the standard for actors. This is CBS News.
Dell's semi-annual sale has arrived. Save big on PCs with Windows 11 Pro. Dell Technologies recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. Call 877-ASK-DELL.
Okay, so how crazy high are these gas prices right now, right? I mean, I filled up my car the other day, and I thought for that price, I could buy a couple of pairs of Skechers and pretty much walk everywhere. I was kind of joking, but I kind of wasn't joking. Because of how affordable Skechers are, you really could buy two pairs for about the same price as filling up a lot of vehicles. Get it? Plus, unlike gas, not only are they affordable, they also last a really long time. Skechers are extremely durable, and many of them are machine washable. You can keep them looking newer, longer, and they're so comfortable. That's the most important thing. Once people put on a pair of Skechers, they never want to wear anything else. With comfort features like Skechers' famous air-cooled memory foam, relaxed fit, wide fit, arch fit, so many other fits and features. It's almost like they're luxury vehicles for your feet, without the luxury price tag. So if you're tired, really tired of paying outrageous prices at the pump, which everybody is, just get yourself a pair or two of Skechers. Your wallet will thank you. So find your perfect pair of Skechers at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
The Street Rods are returning to Burlington for the 28th Annual Northeast Street Rod Nationals, Friday, September 23rd through Sunday, the 25th at the Champlain Valley Exposition Center. There'll be tons of street rods, hot rods, customs, muscle cars, and more. A women's world, arts and crafts fair, a vintage swap meet, and a host of vendors and manufacturers. Discount tickets for seniors, active military, NSRA members, and new this year, a family discount. Plus, get discount tickets at O'Reilly Auto Parts. The 28th Annual Northeast Street Rod Nationals, produced by the National Street Rod Association.
Hi, this
This is Anson Tebbets, co-host of For the Birds, heard Saturdays on WDEV. Each week, Chip Darmstadt and I discuss bird sightings, bird counts, and activity at your feeder. You also can listen anytime to podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Join us Saturdays at 7:30 and 12:15 for the Birds. 28 years on WDEV AM and FM and streaming at WDEVradio.com.
Your chance to be part of the show is on the text line at 802-585-3026.
Now it's back to the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM, FM, and WDEVradio.com.
A couple of minutes left here on the Brady Farkas Show on WDEV AM and FM and WDEVradio.com. I really do remind you and ask you to subscribe to our podcast channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and at WDEVradio.com. You get our podcast delivered every single day right to your podcast feed. It is free. All of our interviews are there. We got some interviews that we don't play on the show that are up on the podcast channel. We spoke to Chris Price of the Boston Globe yesterday about the Patriots. That interview didn't air on this show, but it is on our podcast channel. So if you are not subscribing, this is my personal plea to you to get you to do it. Our podcast numbers are huge. They're very good. This is not me soliciting because I'm desperate. This is just me saying, hey, our team does a lot of work to put this show together, and we do a lot of work behind the scenes, and we want all that work heard. So that's our goal, to get as much of our stuff heard as possible by you. A lot of it's on the air. Some of it is on just the podcast channel. The Red Sox lineup's coming up here momentarily. Sox and Yankees, first of two from Fenway. News came out today that if Xander Bogaerts hits the open market, which he's expected to, the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be very interested in paying Bogaerts. And what's the connection here? Dave Dombrowski is the connection here. Dave Dombrowski is the GM of the Phillies. He was the GM of the Red Sox when Bogey and company won a World Series in 2018. So there's a relationship there between Bogaerts and Dombrowski. I don't know how their personal relationship is, and I won't speculate. All I do know is that Xander Bogaerts clearly knows that Dave Dombrowski values winning, right? Chaim Bloom values winning also, but Chaim Bloom is more about a long play. Dave Dombrowski is about here and now, right? Look, he left the Red Sox organization in tatters when it comes to the farm system, but he won the World Series. He's looking to do the same thing in Philadelphia. They've paid Bryce Harper. They've got Rhys Hoskins. They've got a youngster in Alec Boehm who's a pretty good player. They got Aaron Nola. Like, the Phillies are a team that should be winning, and they're going to go to the playoffs this year. They're paying JT Realmuto, so they're already paying big pieces, right? The Phillies have historically paid well, and they might look to pay Xander Bogaerts too. So this would be a real concern if I were a Red Sox fan. Dave Dombrowski's not shy about throwing money around. Dave Dombrowski is clearly known as a guy who likes to win and who values winning. And for Xander Bogaerts, a guy who is a veteran, Xander Bogaerts doesn't really care about your 5-year plan. Xander Bogaerts cares about winning this year. And he looks at Philly and he sees JT Realmuto and he sees Aaron Nola and he sees Rhys Hoskins and he sees Bryce Harper. Then he sees Kyle Schwarber, who he paid, Nick Castellanos, who he paid. Like, the list goes on. Dave Dombrowski will spend big to win, and he doesn't care about the tax ramifications, and he doesn't care about the farm system. If I were a Red Sox fan, I would be nervous about this. Yes, I would be very nervous about this. That there's a relationship. Dombrowski has one, and he doesn't seem to care about the ramifications of the spending that he does. Yankees 85-56, Sox 69-72. Garrett Cole goes for the Pinstripes 11-7. Nick Pivetta 9-11 for your Sox. Aaron Judge leads off in center. Giancarlo Stanton's the DH. Gleyber Torres is at second. Josh Donaldson's at third. Oswaldo Cabrera is in right. Miguel Andujar is in left. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is at short. Jose Trevino's the catcher, and Marwin Gonzalez is at first. It's a Yankees lineup that's kind of in tatters right now when you see no Anthony Rizzo out here. Aaron Hicks has been sent to oblivion, it appears. Tommy Pham leads off for the Sox. Alex Verdugo is in right. Bogaerts is at short. Devers at third. JD Martinez, the DH. Christian Arroyo's at second. Tristan Casas is at first. Kike Hernandez is at center, and Reese McGuire is the catcher. He bats ninth. No Trevor Story in this one. He's day-to-day right now with a nagging injury. Tom Caron of Nesson with us tomorrow on the Brady Farkas Show at 5:45. We'll talk a little more about the Xander Bogaerts rumors at the potential, or for the possibility, rather, to the Philadelphia Phillies. Sox baseball is next. This is the Brady Farkas Show on DEV.